your soreness time and it helps you grow, right? And that's important for me, at least. Like when I scout players, I'm looking at a lot of different movement characteristics, but I'm also looking at what is their mass coming into our system and how do we project them? So, you know, this is something that I wish I had information when I was your age. Hydration is very important too. I wanted to talk to you guys about those things at the beginning. You should be drinking half your body weight in pounds each day. Okay? Half your body weight in pounds each day in ounces. Okay? I'm living in the US now. I am Canadian, but that's how I'm thinking. So that's about 6 water bottles. All right? Now, when you play, you have to have at least 9 ounces. You have to have a cup. All right? Every half inning. It's very important for injury prevention. So I tell this to all young players. If you think about having 2 pieces of meat, you have a steak in a package and you have a piece of beef jerky, in your mind, you know which one rips easier, right? The dry beef. So you need to make sure that you guys are really well hydrated. And again, when I get back to muscle growth, when you have really big cells, when you put a lot of water in your cells and you're really well hydrated, a lot more protein can get in there. And if you have more protein that gets in the muscle cell, it stays larger, right? And we start gaining more lean mass. And the reason why I keep getting back to this lean mass and why we need muscular development is because that's related to power, right? And baseball is power, all right? So those are some of my self-care, nutrition, high performance things that you guys can do that are very easy, very, very easy. And they're 16, right, Colin? Or are they?
So we have a mix of 14 through 16-year-olds.
Perfect. This is the time. If you guys have not strength trained, we're having a problem. Okay. This is the time in which you can really develop your bodies. Okay. From 14 to 16. And you know, I'm telling you on the scouting side, it used to be, we look for baseball metrics. We look to see how well a player would make decisions, you know, how many walks per game this athlete would have versus strikeouts, these kinds of things that were stats driven. It's gone back to the old days where we're looking at bodies. Okay. The bodies are very important. So when you guys take care of your bodies and you maximize what you're going into. So if you're 5'11" and you're 155 pounds, and you have another player that's of similar ability and he's 175 pounds and he's got 25 pounds on you, typically a scout's eyes are going to be drawn to an athlete that's a little bit more developed. You know, I'm just telling you the truth. So, you know, now you guys at a right age, you got like 2 years before your draft year comes up, you have time. You have time to really develop. And so, you know, I really recommend you guys trying to find a really high quality strength coach, you know, in your area and get programming and get started. Okay. So I'm good. Those are the take home messages, but I know you had some great questions. So go for it, man.
Yeah. Suzanne, do you want to start off with like one of the questions that you had started with?
You're on mute, Suzanne.
I'm on mute. Sorry, everybody. Okay. Hi. We wanted to start with your education, and you think about where you started, and you think about what programs you took. So just kind of start us off with that first level beginning journey as you got into university.
Yeah. So, you know, I really started at the age of 13 was the first time I lifted weights. And Darcy, who Colin Cummings, his coach, is my best friend, and he had an uncle who dropped off an old bench press set to us, and we didn't know what to do with it. I was 13 years old, and he spent an afternoon. He said, you know, I'm going to teach you guys how to bench press. And at 13 years old, I was able to press 1.5 times my body weight at 13. So I was naturally a strong athlete, and I got very, very much into training and reading training books at the age of 13. There was a book that came out by Jose Canseco. I owned it. I started reading about this stuff, and I realized as I was going through school that, you know, I love physical education, being an athlete. And when it got to the high school level and it was focused on the body, and it had a little bit more exercise science around it. I said, you know what, this is the area that I want to focus on. I'm very, very interested in human health and performance. And thank the Lord, I was a decent baseball player. I ended up getting a scholarship to go to the University of Maine, and they had a program called Kinesiology there. And kinesiology is essentially the study of human movement, and across lots of disciplines, from exercise physiology. These are all different divisions of exercise science: biomechanics, motor learning, motor psychology. All those things were involved in kinesiology. And for me, it made most sense because I could coach. I could use this stuff and actually become a coach, you know, learning about the body. And I finished school early and didn't know what to do. I graduated at 20, and I didn't have enough years to be drafted as an amateur. So I was like a free agent. Nothing happened. And I ended up playing in the inter-county baseball, which was in Canada. And a coach came and said, he came to look at one of our pitchers, and he asked me if I had eligibility, and I had 2 years left, and I didn't know what I was going to do. And he said, you know, I'd like to offer you a scholarship to go to grad school. And I thought about it, and you know, it kind of weakened my heart because I'm going to grad school to play baseball. I'm old, man. But I said, yes, I'll do it. And I studied physical education, because remember, I love coaching, and physical education was very helpful to me because it taught me how to educate around coaching and how to use the right cues and how to organize, you know, a structured plan, a lesson plan. And so I felt that I got my master's in physical education, and I came back and didn't really, after I played internationally, didn't know what I wanted to do. I started a business, and I was training volleyball players. I wasn't even training baseball players. I was training volleyball players, and baseball is my thing. But there were so many female athletes that needed to have a strength program. There was nobody around. I was the only game in town in Whitby, Ontario at the time. And I noticed that after the days, I was coming home at 11 o'clock at night, going to work at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I was reading articles from academic journals, okay? I'm licensed by the National Strength and Conditioning Association as a registered coach. And they have a few different publications that they put out that is all with research. So when I'm reading this, I'm like, man, I'm staying up till 2, 3 in the morning reading this stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, you know, that this is really, you know, an exercise scientist, a sports scientist, and that's the direction I want to go. And that led me to the University of Buffalo to do my PhD. So all these different layers, you know, came about from just loving sport, loving movement, you know, and thinking about how can I take sport in an academic discipline that I'm studying it, right? And now where I am in professional baseball, we basically have a little living laboratory of tools that follow players everywhere, and we get tons of interesting data on how their bodies move. So for instance, we're very interested in vertical jump characteristics and how the vertical jump influences our players. And so there are tools that I learned in my education called Forceplates, and they're becoming very well known in the training industry, that you don't have to have a really significant academic background, but it teaches me what I'm looking for. How does the athlete decelerate when they go down? How do they redirect? What is the time on the plate versus their height in the air? All these different equations, we look and see how the athlete changes in the way they contract their muscles. And then we know how to train them and make them better on field. So you see, you take something that was very basic, and then it becomes to an elite level if you're really passionate. And some of you guys might not want to go into the sports science world. You might want to be, you know, business guys. You might want to be, in economics, or you might want to do something, you know, history related. There are people, if you want a major league job, there are people from all different backgrounds in this sport. So, you know, it's really up to you and kind of where your path wants to go. But I would say, you know, find something that you're really passionate in now, and start reading. And you know, it's okay you could email professors, right now when you're, young and you're interested in a program. Hey, I'm thinking about this particular program. I wish I had done that when I was younger. So I'd have known more and been able to make choices. I took the University of Maine. I should have gone to Penn State. That's one of the best programs in kinesiology. So that was my academic journey.
Yeah. And I took I ended up finishing off, Ryan. I ended up finishing my school career, and I've just got my BSc in kinesiology from Seton Hall. So I never really continued
Nice.
with it, and I've trained, and with these guys here, what we did this year is we implemented a structure of trying to turn them into athletes and getting them to understand that, you could be a baseball player and you really want baseball, but the athletic side of who you are needs to translate into a baseball player. And that's what we started doing this year, where we started using a little bit more of some of the speed sleds, and we're using more hurdles and stuff like that this year, trying to get them to understand about just their movements and trying to, pick up speed, pick up strength and stuff like that. We didn't implement a like a strength training program, but we implemented more of the agility and speed program into the program this year, so that we can get them to understand their bodies a little bit more.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm glad that you mentioned speed sleds, because I have a friend who is pretty much, I would say he's the world expert. He's Irish in resisted sled sprinting. And we've used it in our organization. We do it constantly. We almost do that more than any other type of land training, like change of direction and curvilinear running. But you guys need to develop resistance in a horizontal plane, right? And when you increase the strength over your body weight, when you're sprinting, your acceleration goes up. And you think about baseball, right? Most of your plays are between 0 and 90 feet. So athletes that are more gifted in accelerating over a short period of time, they end up having better times to first base. So we do a ton of resisted work. I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I think that is, that's awesome. I would say, when you guys get going, ask your parents, just say, hey, I want to purchase a tow sled with a good harness that goes around your belt.
Yep.
And you guys should have enough weight. You should buy iron plates that you can take to a park, or you can go somewhere and you can transport at least half your body, right? So if it's too light, if the plates are too light, like some of our guys use one plate, but they're doing extended distances. They're doing like 30 yards, so 90 feet plus. That's a long distance. But if you're going to work within 15 yards, which is like half the distance, and 45 feet, and that's where things are really decided, you should make it heavy. You should make it at least half body weight, and you'll see your acceleration will go up. You're teaching your body the right mechanics, because it allows you to lean, right? So when I look at really good runners on the field, I look and see how quickly are they upright. So athletes that within a few steps are upright, they change the way they push into the ground. Like you want to push back behind the hip like this, right? And what happens is when I'm standing straight up, I'm pushing underneath my hip. I'm more vertical, and I lose the ability to accelerate. And so this is really good to find out, because I think a lot of teams, they don't go the extra mile to do resisted sprinting. I think it's really important.
Yeah, and we even like with my son. So like, I mean, we've had these last 3 months off, and now we're starting to get back into it. I was actually thinking about bringing them out today, but then I was like, no, you know what? We had a really hot day today, so the guys were cooking today. So, but it's definitely something that I am gonna bring out, and even along with parachutes, just trying to get them to, utilize as much power force into the ground and working with their legs as best we can.
Perfect. Sounds awesome.
So one of the questions I'll throw at you, what was the difference between the Orioles and the Angels, or what did you find is the difference between the Orioles and the Angels?
Yeah. it's different because you got an East Coast team and you got a West Coast team. And the East Coast team, they're heavily influenced by the Yankees. And so, you know, the way you carry yourself, you're wearing ties on the plane, button-up shirts, nice shoes. And then you go to the Angels, and the Angels is like, hey, man, you know, wear what you want to wear. Be comfortable. You know, it's those different mentalities right there will tell you the difference. I work for a manager named Buck Showalter. I don't know if you guys know that name, but that guy made me sweat every day. There was constant, there was a constant feel of being evaluated, where when I came to the Angels, there was more of a autonomy. They said, you know, Ryan, we want you to be creative. We want you to do the things you need to do. We don't need to watch you. We trust you. At the time, when I was with the Orioles, I was an assistant major league strength coach, and I was the roving coordinator. So I went to all the minor league teams to see how we're training and to check on the coaches and give support to the coaches with anything new that we were going to put in. The training had a very high Olympic lifting focus, so incredibly technical, way beyond what you guys are ready for right now. But, you know, like competitive Olympic weightlifting, we had a lot of our players doing cleans. We were doing clean and jerks. We were doing overhead squatting. We were doing snatches. We were doing a lot of different complex lifting because I was mostly with major leaguers. They were men. When I came to the Angels, I had a title of player performance coordinator when I started, and I had to deal with a lot of the player development group. And in player development, we have kids your age, 16 years old, that we sign that are in the Dominican Republic, and we have, you know, guys in their 40s that are still playing. And I had to create more of a structure that was like school. And being able to tier athletes, like this is a tier 1 athlete, this is a tier 2 athlete, this is a tier 3 athlete. And that's where my physical education comes from, is that they have to meet certain criteria to advance. The process metrics. So when I was with the Orioles in 2012, the main thing was pitch FX data. And this is stuff that you guys can see online. It's really easy to type in pitch FX, and it tells you basically, you know, pitch characteristics and location, those kinds of things, release point. And then hitting was very basic. There really wasn't a ton about hitting at the time when I was there. And when I got to the Angels, there's some really deep metrics like driven percentage. So we look at taking complex ideas of exit velocity, like how fast the ball comes off your bat, and the angle that it's hit, launch angle. And we formulate proprietary computations that we call driven percentages. And we look at some of these metrics to know how we can predict a player, you know, from the age that you guys come in. Let's just say you're a Dominican player, you're 16 years old. We have the technology to track ball flight. We have the technology to track its launch angle. And we can basically determine how we need to coach based on those things. So there's much heavier data emphasis now in the game. And especially in the strength and conditioning field, like I told you guys about, using really high-tech tools in training. So we have a really like huge index of data to work with that I didn't have when I started with the Orioles.
That's crazy. That's crazy. I can't imagine, like, you know, and maybe that's where you started to see, like, you know, a lot of, you know, like the Chris Davises, why he was so strong, right? A couple more holes in his bat, but I mean, you know, that's why he's so strong and stuff like that, right? Manny Machado, even though he didn't necessarily work as hard as you would know more than we would, but he was just one of those guys that was kind of gifted, worked when he wanted to, from what I remember. But then, you know, he was a strong guy.
Yeah. Manny Machado, he had some issues with his knees. His running technique wasn't very good. And that's why when you guys are working on your running technique at this age, it's so much easier. You know, when a guy's like, you know, 19, 20, and they've been running a certain way for a very long time, it's very hard to break them of those habits. So he had a lot of stress on the insides of his knees. He was just so God-given with his talent that the weight room for him at the beginning seemed like it was extra. because it wasn't something that he really needed as a player. Chris Davis, on the other hand, I gravitated to. We're friends. When I first got to the Orioles, Buck Showalter said, this guy should be playing football. I don't know if he's a baseball player, but I think he should be playing football because he spends too much time in the weight room. And I loved it. And the first time that we ran a 40-yard sprint, so we had this combine week because, baseball players love football in the U.S. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, they are watching football. They're watching combine. So we had a combine week, and we were doing 40-yard sprints. And, Chris is a big guy. He's about 240 at 6'3.5", and he ran a 4.64 electrical time, which is like unbelievable. And when I saw that, I said, this kid is gifted. This is not a bodybuilding guy, but he trained so hard. And even before games, like there were some games that we would train him at max capacity, and he wanted it. He was so revved up that it put him in a confident state that, I watched one game I was there. He was DHing. He hit 3 homers in a game. And we trained really hard that day. And he was somebody who was really in tune with how training and baseball went together. And that really influenced me. It's just like somebody to see, like, he's so diligent with his diet and his routine. That it opened up my eyes in terms of how you guys need to be as players now. If you don't have a routine that you go through and prepare yourself, that's a big problem. So, that's something that I saw those guys do, is they would constantly talk to me about what they did, like in the door, out the door. There's something that they do over the course of those periods that, prepares them for not only playing, but for the next day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So one of the things we've got we do have a little bit of a celebrity. I'm going to kind of point him out. I don't know if he's there, but Evan's dad, Ivan Torres, played for the Cuban national team when he was younger.
Nice.
Keep on kind of going back to him in regards to this, but it's just, once again, it's, all the philosophies that we can try to give to these guys to get them to understand what it was like and what it's like, especially yourself, being entrenched with these types of players. And, Ivan yesterday was talking about Ray Ordonez, who's a gifted infielder when, coming up through the Mets and everything like that. And just listening to him speak about it. And, my next question to you will be, obviously, can you tell us the difference between an Albert Pujols and a Mike Trout, being with, one of the top players in all of Major League Baseball, and the guy was like, not to say that he still isn't, but basically guys go to him, Albert Pujols, in regards to hitting, in regards to being one of the top players in his time, to now having one of the top players in Mike Trout. What's that feeling like?
Yeah. So Albert is, in my opinion, the hardest working athlete I've ever seen. The most regimented, trains 4 days a week, has, he's got his own masseuse. He's got it pretty much dialed in, and, he's around my age. I'm 41. I think he's turning 40, 39 or 40. And, his routine has been everything, really. And, he's an easy guy. Once you work on our team, he loves you. He's a really, really good guy, but you don't want to get near him around 10 to 15 minutes before the game. He's got a look in his eyes. It's just so much different than any athlete. It's like he looks like a killer, and he hits in the cage. Nobody hits with him, because if he's DHing, if he's playing first base, and he's out on the field, but and it's kind of his time where it's meditative for him. He is a player, and I see that in Mike too. Mike isn't there yet. He's still young as far as getting his routine. Mike is incredibly open to lots of people, and he doesn't say no very often to things. And I think once Mike figures out that he can say no, because lots of people want him, media and those kinds of things, that he'll spend more time on his body. You know, he loves to play video games before our games. Like, that's kind of his place to escape. He's still a kid, you know, he's still young, but I think he'll come into that Albert Pujols, you know, I'm in the zone. And what I see in both of those guys is that they stay in the moment. You know, two things that are bad about young players in the major league level is they live in two places. So sometimes they think of, if only I did this, you know, because they know they're being judged, they're making the major league minimum money, and they don't know if they're going to be sent up and down. And when things happen, they get sent down. They think, if only I did this in this situation. And then when they get here, you know, the ones that don't have that, the right mentality, they think, what if this happens? So they live in like this, almost this like state of depression of, oh man, I wish that happened. I wish